And we are live. Okay, it's good to be back, everyone. It really is. And Bezrat Hashem, we'll learn more and keep going and make this year a productive year in many ways. I would love to get back face to face. So happy to Tiana Gaynor. We'll keep zooming for you. But I would love to get face to face if everybody's open to that. But we can discuss that at the end. I think it'd be nice too. Look, if we need to, it's nice also, in the comfort of your home, as long as we're learning, that's the most important thing. And I know it's a bit of a pain somewhat to come out of your house and have to go to the base midrash, but it is the nice thing to do. But let's see where we go. Let's start learning. So what I'd like to do is look at the depth of the concept of having challahs on the table. I wasn't sure what to call it, so I called it what I did, but what I really want to do is look at this concept of lechem mishnah. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go into the ideas of lechem mishnah. And when doing so, we can begin to understand that it's not as, I suppose, simple as we want it to be or we'd like it to be. And the reality is that nothing is. And as we go into this, we'll see that there's so much depth in just having these two challahs and what we're supposed to do with that and how we're supposed to do with that. And I'm hoping that we can really come out of it with something very, very, very profound, which will enhance our basic Shabbos table. And that's always something nice. So can everybody see the screen? Okay. So the Torah says in Shemot, we've just read it recently, that on the sixth day, so Bnei Israel are given this man, and they're not sure what man is. They've got no clue what this food is. They don't know what to call it. They don't know where it comes from. They don't know how to deal with it, but they're enjoying it. And on the sixth day, where they want to go out and get, what happens is, so what happens is, the sixth day they get twice the amount of lechem mishneh, twice of it. The word mishneh on the most simple level is from sheni. Shnei omer le'echad, 2 omers for each person. Everybody comes and tells Moshe. It's like this amazing thing. They managed to get these 2 things of man. On that, then the Tziv points out and he says something very important. He says, lechem mishneh, shnei ha'omer le'echad. It says lechem mishneh. Well, lechem mishneh is the words that we use to describe the 2 challahs on a Friday night. But if it's 2 challahs, then why does it say shnei ha'omer le'echad, 2 omers? Surely it means the same thing. It seems to be too many words. So says the Netziv, he says, he quotes from the Mechilta. Mikan lamad Rebbe Eliezer b'Mechilta. From here, Rebbe Eliezer learns in the Mechilta. Now look at this. The lechem mishnah, the word lechem mishnah, which we usually use to denote the double usage of bread, double bread, so there's 2 loaves on the Shabbos table. Mashma'o, it implies meshuneh b'mar'eh uv'ta'am. That's amazing. It's not that it's coming to tell you that you have 2, but it's coming, the word mishneh is actually a play of the word meshuneh. Meshuneh means different, b'mar'eh, in the way it looks, uv'ta'am, and the way it tastes. Have you ever wondered, why do you have funny looking challahs? Why can't you just take a piece of a loaf of bread? Why don't you just have a roll? Who cares? Why does it have to be a platter, 4 platters, 3 platters, sugar on the top, and all the other chazarah that we do with all these things to make them different, to make them look different? So according to the Mechilta, that comes from the word lechem mishneh, right? Because there's something about Shabbos that the Shabbos challahs should be different. They should be different in 2 ways. Firstly, in the way we see them, and secondly, in the way we taste them. And it's interesting because if you remember, we spoke about when you say Kiddush, you should look at the candles, and the candles when you look at the candles, it takes away a bit of the loss of sight that one experienced during the week. And here we are seeing that this concept of sight, of what you see, and the other senses, the time, the taste. These are the things that Shabbos, the Friday night meal, on the halachic aspects of it, actually becomes, in a way, a bit of a sensory space to really feed our senses on the Friday night. And there's a lot to think about, I suppose, on that. But let's move on. Aval. So he says that's according to Rabbi Eliezer. But Rabbi Yeshua Amar, Ze lechem kaful kamashmo. You know what means lechem mishnah? Lechem mishnah means very simple. The double loaves. And it comes to teach us that the reason why it uses lechem mishnah and the shtei omer is to teach us that in actual fact that a double amount fell on that sixth day, and therefore they realized that they should eat that they should collect a double amount. Now on that, the Gemara says the following. The Gemara is an amazing thing here, because the Gemara here and the Gemara in Brachos, sorry, the English is there. The Gemara in Brachos here says the following. Rabbi Abba said, on Shabbos you should break bread over 2 loaves. On Shabbos, when you have your meal, you should break it over 2 loaves. Why? Because it says this pasuk that we just learned about lechem mishnah. So Amar Rav Ashi, Chazina Leila Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi says that I saw Rav Kahana. So let me get to the English here. That Rav Kahana took 2 loaves, but he only broke 1. Okay. So now we've got this interesting thing that now these Amoraim are now discussing of what is the process, what are you supposed to do? So Rav Kahana had 2 loaves, but he only broke 1 loaf. Rabbi Zera used to break off just enough for the whole meal. And Ravina says to Rav Ashi, but that's amazing. How can a person who is such a big tzaddik like Rav Kahana break off an enormous piece enough for the meal? I mean, we all know, I don't know, I've got a bit of a soft spot for challah. I think everybody has somehow. If you like bread, then you're done. All the banting, schmanting, all the other stuff that we want to do, they all get destroyed in one foul soup on a Friday night. All right? But you don't take half a challah. You take slices. You actually think you're eating like in a dietary way because you're eating 1 slice at a time, right? You eat 17 slices of challah, but don't take the whole lot. But he says that Rabbi Zera used to take a whole enormous piece. So Ravina says to Rav Ashi, but that's greed. So he says, no. He did not act like it every day, only on Shabbos. So since it's only on Shabbos, it's clear that part of that is the oneg Shabbos, part of that the experience of Shabbos. And then the Gemara says when Rav Ami and Rav Asi used to use the bread of the Eruv, they would say a special bracha. Okay, so what we have here is clear that according to this pasuk of Lechem Mishnah, you need to have 2 loaves on the table. What you do with them is something we're going to see, that there are so many different opinions and understandings. But let's start, the best way to start really is with the Shulchan Aruch. Because the Shulchan Aruch is going to distill all the opinions and bring it down into the most practical thing. So it says the Shulchan Aruch the following. You can see there's a little bracket there. It says that you must break your bread. When we break bread, so I don't know about you guys, but I remember in my house, we always used to break bread until my sister bought one of those funny little olive tree boards from the olive shop, when she went on Ulpan, and that changed the whole way because that had a little knife in it. So you have the knife, and then instead of breaking it, you now start cutting it. Some people cut, some people break. According to Sfardim, will never cut; they break. But Seya, breaking bread, break the bread. I'll stake carrot on 2 loaves, but their loaves must be whole. You hold them both in your hand, and you break the bottom one. Now let's understand this, which means you're holding them somehow, where there's one on top of the other. The one they're facing you, or at least in some way, the one is closer to you. And which one do you eat? You eat the bottom one. Says the Ramah, that's Ramoshe Isris, and we're going to have to unpack this because this is not easy. Dafka Belel Shabbos. That's on Friday night, that you eat the bottom one. Aval B'Yom Shabbos, but on Shabbos day, or, now listen carefully, or Leil Yontif, or Yontif night, what's Imal El Yonah. you actually can break the top one. And the reason is because of Kabbalistic reasons. Okay? So now we're going to have to enter into a little bit of Kabbalah if we can understand it. But let's try just to unpack this for a little bit. When you learn a halacha, you've got to see what's the halacha teaching you something new. So there are a number of new things that it may be teaching us. Now we know a lot of this, but so we're just going to go through the new stuff as a rehash. Number one, it's going to be 2 loaves. We learned that from the pasuk that we saw early on. Number 2, those loaves should be what? Shleimot. They should be complete. Number 3, we see that we hold them shtehen beyado. We hold them in our hands. Now there's the halacha of holding in your hands. Why do you hold them in your hands? Because the halacha, when you make a bracha, you hold the thing that you're making the bracha in your hand. Okay? Now, it says in your hand, you hold it in your hand. There's no way you can hold those 2 challahs in one hand. So you hold them with 2 hands. And there is that concept of holding with the 2 hands. If you'll notice that the bracha of hamotzi is different from every single other birkat nehenin, any other bracha that we make on food that we eat. And why is that? Because the bracha of hamotzi is made up of 10 words, and the bracha, and every other bracha is made up of 9 words. So, for example, Borei Peri Ha'etz, Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Borei Peri Ha'etz, which is 9 words. Whereas when you say Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, which is an extra additional 1 word, which makes it 10. Well, by the way, some people count the minyan saying the bracha, because it's 10 words. Right? So some people do that. But the point of the 10 is the 10 covers the 10 fingers. It's the 10 fingers that are holding onto that loaf as you make that bracha. And you do the bottom one, which he says is Dafron El Shabbos. Now, why? So what? Why is it so important for the halacha to tell us this? Why does it become the thing of this halacha, right? That you have to do the bottom one. So the answer is because we have a din. We have a specific halacha. She'ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. We don't pass over mitzvot. So for example, let's take grape juice time, right? You make Borei Pri Hagafen. We've learned this already. You don't have to have the grape juice. If you want to have the grape juice, fantastic. You don't have to. But if you're going to, it's not appropriate for you to get the grape and pass it to the next person. Ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. You're about to drink. I think just heard a bracha of Borei Pri Hagafen. So you shouldn't pass it to the next person. You just drink it yourself, but then pass the next one. Then you can pass that all the way down. But one shouldn't pass over mitzvot. So here you've got the bread in front of you, and which one are you making the bracha on? Which one are you breaking? The bottom one. And that's why the Ramah has to say this derech HaKabbalah. That's not normative behavior, because normative behavior is that if you have the closest food that you have to you on which you've made the bracha, that's the one that you're going to eat. So there's something very deep there, which at some point in time we're going to have to, we'll get to. Okay, so number one, we're understanding the bracha has to. So the loaf that we eat is the bottom loaf. Comes along the Shulchan Aruch and says the following: Lo yiftzah prusa katana mo'od lahamotzi. When you actually make hamotzi, and you break off a piece for you to eat that hamotzi, don't make it a small piece. The meichzi katsar ayin, that makes you look like a schnorrer. Okay? Makes you look like a schnorrer. Nobody wants to look like a schnorrer. It says, but you know what also? Also don't have too big a piece. Why? Because that makes you look like a glutton. But ein zeh miderech eretz. And that's not derech eretz. You don't want to make yourself look like a schnorrer, and you don't want to make yourself look like a glutton. That's not derech eretz. It's an amazing thing. By the way, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't teach. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't teach you musar. The Shulchan Aruch is telling you halacha. That's a derech eretz away from a halachic point of view. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, hold on a second. We've got a Gemara that we learned about one of the great Tanaim, or a great Amoraim, that broke off this massive piece of bread. And we said it was okay, because that was Shabbos. And that's what the halacha is. V'zehu b'chol, that's during the week. Aval b'Shabbos, on Shabbos, mitzvah livtzoa prusa gedola. The mitzvah is to break off enough bread that it's enough bread to last you for the whole meal. And in that case, you're not like a glutton. Why? Because during the week, you act like a mensch and you only break off a small piece of bread. Not too small, because then you look like a schnorrer, right? Enough for you to eat, but on Shabbos, you can do whatever you want. So then he says, look at this. Not only that, during the week, when you're eating with your household, or you visit, or you have visitors, and they will rely on your bracha to fulfill their mitzvah. And the Baal Habayit gives of his piece mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to cut a big piece in order to be able to give of that piece to everybody who's gathered around. And not from the bread that's left. Let me explain what that means. It's an amazing thing. The Shulchan Aruch says that on a Shabbos, and also during the week, if you are sitting with a number of people and you are going to give them your challah, so then how are you supposed to do it? How are you supposed to cut it? So he says it's very simple. We've got a concept called the prusa rishona, the first piece, which you cut for yourself, right? That's the first, because you made the bracha, so you cut it for yourself. He says when you do that, that prusa rishona is the most cherished piece of the challah, because that's the one, so to speak, which you made the bracha. So you should cut it big enough, the first piece, upon which you can then cut smaller pieces for the people around the table. You hear that? So I'll tell you what I do, and I did this once when Rabbi Wan was at our house. I cut it in half, and then I cut it, and he said to me, "Oh, I see you do like the Rosh." So I didn't know that was the Rosh at that time. Now I do, but right. Why? Because the Rosh said you cut it in half and then you give of that half that you cut to everybody around you, because that's the most important piece of the bread, right? Don't give the second grade, which is the piece after you've cut. Give that piece. It's the same in a way. I mean, it's a little bit different, but in a way, when you make kiddush, the question is, what are you supposed to give around the table? So do you give? Do you take a sip and then you pour a little bit into it? Well, you can't do that during COVID. That would be terrible, right? So what do? So people fill up the cups with wine and just hand it out. So that is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to fill a jug with wine, grape juice, whatever it is. You make the bracha and then you pour a little bit from your cup before you drink into that jug. So that now is a part of it. But if you do it the other way around, then it doesn't really work. So in other words, to put the non-brochered wine into the already brochered wine doesn't work. It should be the other way around. You pour wine in and you pour wine onto it. Okay. So now says the Shulchan Aruch. We carry on. How much challah am I supposed to give out? The shiur prusazu leish echad. How big must that slice be for each person? Yesh Omrim, there are those who say there are those who say that it must be a kazait. A kazait is quite a big piece of bread, so that they can eat the kazait. Yesh Omrim, and there are those who say you don't need a kazait. Why? Because even the smallest amount of bread, it's an interesting halacha that he brings here, even the smallest amount of bread is enough for you to make a motzion. So give half a chazait, whatever. And now he says, look here. It says, "V'lechem shelanu," our bread. Haminag ha'pashut, the simple minag is shechotchin mikol halechem. You cut from each bread chelek gadol, a big piece. Umimenu chotchin kedei shir lahamotzi, and that's what you then cut for the hamotzi. Lefi godol hakamot shel kikare lechem shelanu kimat she'i efshar b'inyan acher. Ach v'lachamim ktanim yaseh kemo shenitniver. It says, this whole thing is that we got our big breads. When you got small little challahs, it's a different reality. But with our big challahs that we normally use, you would cut a big piece and then divide it up amongst everybody else. Okay. Why do we have? So we understand we've got to have two breads. We understand you got to take the bottom one. You got to understand that they got to be full. Let's now unpack these halachas a little bit more in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, everybody with me? Good. Let's go. Shtei kikarot. Why do you need two loaves? So he says, simple. Zeichel man comes to remind us of the manna, which was that they collected two things on Shabbos. But I just want you to remember, we made a bit of a differentiation between Shabbos and Yom Tov. If you'll remember. It says here, so therefore the Mishnah says, Gam b'Yom Tov tzarich liftzah shtei kikarot. Also on Yom Tov. Also on Yom Tov. Not only is the Shabbos part, the two, but on Yom Tov as well, but the cutting of the bottom, which we do on a Friday night, doesn't apply to Yom Tov, and that's an important thing. Okay. V'gam hanashim, ladies, please listen. V'gam hanashim, the women, mechuyavot b'lechem mishnah. They are also obligated in this eating of these two loaves. Why? Shayu gam ken b'neis haman, because they were also part of the neis haman, of the miracle of the manna. Okay, there's a different halacha. Okay, now, what about the shleimot? What about this? They have to be complete. And he says, when a person makes the bracha, you got to think about the fact that the people around you, they're making it on their behalf, which is so interesting. You know, if you go to a Chabad Shabbos, everybody gets their own. Everybody gets their own lechem mishnah. That's part of the Chabad minhag. Not sure why. I really don't know why. Because we're going to see what it says here. It says, "Vagam yomayla hamasubin shechavnu letzet birchato." You also got to tell the people around the table, "I'm going to make the bracha. You'll fulfill your mitzvah on my bracha." Kadesh kulam yatzu belechem mishnah. Everyone will fulfill the mitzvah. Ucheshem motzi acherim. When you have other people around the table, okay, you need to bring them in to your bracha. How do you bring them into your bracha? Now, just sitting around the table, everybody's going, right? Because no one's allowed to talk, right? And now you need to bring them all into this gathering that we're sitting. So what do you say? Yomar v'shut rabotai, with your permission. Now, I've seen the many Shabbos tables. It's not a criticism. It's just that people say savri before they make hamotzi. Savri means, what do you think? Bereshut means with your permission. Savri Rabotai is the thing we say before we make Kiddush, and that has enormous historical factors. One of the factors of that is, according to many, the reason why you say Savri, which means what do you think, my masters, and then what do they respond to that? Like, so Ashkenazim, Savri, they just like keep quiet. If you've been in your Sfardi home, the guy says Savri, everyone goes L'chaim, told him the Shalom. It's like a whole spiel that happens there, right? Why? What's L'chaim got to do with Savri? What you're saying to them? Come together, we're going to make Kiddush. So the answer is because the reason you say Savri is that that's brought back into the concept of when a person was sentenced to death. So to death, one of the things they would do is they would get wine. So the wine was a symbol, not of life, but actually a symbol of death. And here you're taking wine, you're about to make a bracha. So you say to everybody, guys, what do you think? Do you think this is a good wine, or is it a positive wine or a negative wine, so to speak? L'chaim. Oh, great. Let's make the bracha. Let's carry on with our kiddush. That's savri. That's for Priya. But when it comes to Hamoitzi, you're sitting around the table, you're asking reshus, you're asking permission, so to speak, to be able to make the hamotzi on behalf of everybody else. And that's why it says the Mishnah Berurah, Af al pi shehu habalabayit, even though it's my bread. I don't have to ask you. You come to my table. I don't have to ask you, sorry, do you mind if we eat? It's not going to be the other way around. So he says, no. Humi derech anava. It's an unbelievable concept that as you're about to eat bread, you express the concept of humility. It's my house. I've got all this Baruch Hashem, so much plenty, so much bracha. But I say, Birashut, I say with humility and another, with your permission, let us begin the meal together. Okay, I think it's just something that we can bear in mind. Okay, he says, you hold in your hand B'shat HaMotzi of Atzeah. Okay. Now the question is, how do you, what do you do with these breads? How are you supposed to cut them? How are you supposed to eat them? What you're supposed to do? I want to show you this Mishnah Berurah. It's interesting Mishnah Berurah. He says here, the Rashal and the Shalah. The Rashal and the Shalah are both very Kabbalistic halachas. They're halachas with deep Kabbalistic sense. Nahagu lachtoch shnehem kaperish harashba. The Rashba, one of the great Rishonim, he said, you need to cut both of them. I don't know if you've been at home. Some people cut both. They'll cut immediately through both, to the two of them, as after they make hamotzi. That is v'chein iskim agra. That's according to the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says you cut both of them, which means you can't keep one of them for the next meal, right? Even if there's just two of you together, you have rather have a small one, right? V'makpid alohet sa'ah. And if you are strict on, you're worried about, spending too much money on these big challahs, so then what do? Oisa gimel challahs gedolos v'gimel katanos. Have 3 big ones and 3 small ones, so you can cut through the big one and a small one at each meal. It says, but we don't. That's not what most people do. Most people just cut and open the bottom one on a Friday night and the top one on a Shabbos day. Let's carry on. Hatachtoina. So what about the tacht, the bottom one? And here is where we see, says the Mishnah Berurah, this idea that the Bach actually points out that ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. We don't go over against mitzvahs. V'ataz tiken zeh. So how do you get away from not passing over mitzvahs? So the Taz, well, these are the great commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. The Taz said, well, you know what I want to do? Nahag lahaniach hatachton karov elav. What he would do, he would hold the bottom one closer to him than the top one. So, it's like you've got to have like good dexterity. It's good, like if you have OT issues, it's not so easy to do this whole story, right? Because you're holding the one closer to the other. So then you can always touch the one at the bottom first. Or you take the Elyon, the top one, as you say the Hamotzi, and then you do what? And you put it down as you finish the bracha, and you put it underneath. And then you put that. That's quite complicated. I think you really have to have good cord. The easiest one is just to bring the bottom one closer to you. Okay? Then, very important. He says we got to shelo yachtoch bekikar ad achar habrocha. You're not allowed to cut the bread until you've made the bracha. Why? Because it has to be a complete complete loaf until such time as you've finished the bracha. Kadesh yu hakikarot shleimot. Okay? And then he says an amazing thing. I don't know if you've ever seen, some people will just go over the bread with a knife before they make the hamotzi. People are very strict, will make a little marking on the challahs before the bracha. Does anybody know why they do that? So I'll put you out of your miseries. Okay, I'll put you out of the miseries.
I've got an
Yes.
idea. I think
Yes.
so that you don't delay where to cut. So you think about where to cut it before, and then you
Okay,
make them
excellent.
after you've made the bracha, you can cut straight away.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask you a question. So you're saying, so you're thinking about where you're going to cut. Was that your thing? Sorry, Mark, is that what you're saying?
No, so you think about it before you say the bracha, so that after you've made the bracha, you don't have to delay and you can cut in the right place straight away.
Okay, so why, before you have an apple, you don't make a little thing in the apple so that you can know where to cut your apple?
Good point.
Okay, sorry, I'm not trying to diss what you said.
No, it's okay.
It's important to think about that. So the answer
Yes.
to that is because in the old days, now our bread does not have a very thick crust because it's made in the ovens like that. We have a friend of ours in Israel. Oh my God, Dikla Lapidot and Rabbi Lapidot. So whenever we go to Yerushalayim, they invite us there for Shabbat. She makes her challahs in a pizza oven. And when they come out, they've got this incredibly like strong and hard crust. So I never understood why people make this thing. But when you have a hard crust like that, you actually have to make a cut in it. Because if you don't make the cut in it, then after you made the bracha, you actually got to start like sawing through the hard crust. And that seems to be what in the old days, because the crust was so hard, they made this mark. This is where I'm going to cut, and I've already started the cut so that it's much easier to cut, and therefore I can do the mitzvah, which is the eating, not only the bracha, as soon as I possibly can. So it do go along some of the things that you were saying, Martin, but I think it's a deep historical significance. If you're going to get your challahs from, I don't want to give anybody a specific plug, wherever you're going to get your challahs from, okay, most of the challahs that we get today are quite soft, so you wouldn't have to do that from a strict halachic point of view. Some say one should continue to do it because it's it's like the practice that people did. Everyone must do what they feel comfortable with. Okay, let's go into a little bit of deeper stuff. Okay, so the says the Kaf HaChaim. Kaf HaChaim, Sephardi, very, very Kabbalistic in many ways. Says the following: Katava Bach, the Bach said, you asked that same question. How can it be that you go against the idea of ein mavirin al mitzvahs, that the mitzvah, you always do the mitzvah as soon as you can? He says, therefore, now look, he's going to change the whole thing. That the essence is like the great sages hold, shel olam mevarchim al ha'elyon. You know what? Make the bracha on the top one. Says the Kaf HaChaim. Because that covers two things. The one is the normal halacha from the Gemara, and then he says it's also Kabbalistic. But if you remember, we looked at the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch, well, the Ramah said the Kabbalistic thing is to do what? To have the bottom one, not the top one. So what are we going to do with that? Difficult. And therefore he says, "Kfar katavnu la'el, v'gam pi ha'kabbalah shel Rabbeinu ha'ari, tzarich livtzah elyon." He says, even according to the Kabbalistic incantations of the Arizal, that's Yitzchak Luria, that you should cut the top one. V'lo yesh chiluk ben su'udas hayom v'su'udas halayla, and there's no separation between the nighttime and the daytime. V'anu ein lanu ela kabbalat ha'ari shekibel me'Eliyahu hanavi. That's like mind-boggling. We have, says the Kaf HaChaim, we have this Kabbalistic tradition from the Arizal. And the Arizal, Rav Yitzchak Luria, if you look at any Chabad Siddur is Nusach Ari. For those we know that, right? So where did the Ari Lazal learn that you shouldn't be mavirin ala mitzvahs, you shouldn't pass over the mitzvahs, and you should do the top one? From Eliyahu Hanavi. So you got a choice. You can either go like the Ramah, or you can go like the Arizal. Each person needs to go according to their specific minhag, their practice, and all of them are okay. And now he says here, Val Kain, Gami she'ein lo yud beit kikarot, velo arba, ki im shnayim. I'll translate this. For a person who doesn't have 12 loaves, and he doesn't even have 4 loaves, all he has is 2 loaves, he should also cut on the top. Why is that? Because the Arizal brings from Eliyahu Hanavi, that Eliyahu Hanavi taught him that he should have how many loaves at every meal? 12. So good luck for those of you who make homemade challahs. Okay, that's a lot of challah to make. That is, if you go to any Hasidic tish, you will see that that's what they do. They do this, they have these 12 loaves, and it's quite mind-blowing. They cut it all and they send it out, and if you've got a Hasidic Fabringen happening, that's the way to do it. Okay, says the Kaf HaChaim, he says, if you remember, it says that you should hold the bread with your in your hand, and you break it. So he says the following. He says that the language seems to imply that even while you're breaking it, the two should be in your hand. And you should only break one. He says that not that you should cut one, but you should break them as one, both of them as one. Not like those who make a brocha on both of us. That's what most of us do. We make a brocha, and then after the brocha, we take the one, we put it aside, and then we cut everybody for the one. He says, the Lav Shapir Avdi. That's not a good thing to do. And he quotes from the Rav, the Tiferet Adam, who in all these different places. I'm going to get to the bottom line that B'shata B'tzia Vadai B'masha Achashtehen B'shata Brocha. Says you've got to hold, since you make holding them both at the time of the brocha, you've got to break them both at the time when you say the brocha. Now we don't do that. We just do the one because that's our custom. All of this is customary. Remember, the Kaf HaChaim is very Kabbalistic, and I just thought to bring it because it's not interesting from a different space. Okay. The Shulchan Aruch. Let's go a little bit more into the Shulchan Aruch. We've got a few more minutes, and then we'll end. The Shulchan Aruch says the following: Mitzvah livtzoa b'Shabbat prisa gedola shetasvik lo kol hasuda. The mitzvah is to break a piece that is big enough for you to have the for the whole meal. And if that's the case, what one should try and do is just break enough that piece. And why is that? Because the brocha that you make on the challah needs to vest within that first initial piece. The Shulchan Aruch says the following, that the reason that you have to ask who's supposed to make hamotzi. So we've all been to weddings, right? We've all been to weddings. Baruch Hashem, they're all starting again. Okay? At the weddings, Uncle Irving is normally called up to make hamotzi. Now, the reason why they call up Uncle Irving is because Uncle Irving's got no clue. And the only thing he knows is on Friday night you make hamotzi. Right? And I don't mean to be horrible, but that's what happens. But the halacha is that who's supposed to make hamotzi? Sorry, say again, Lana. The groom. Why the groom? Because the halacha is he's the balabait. Or either him or his father or the father-in-law, whoever paid, right? They're the balabait. That around one's table, the person who's the balabait, the person who provides the food, should make the hamotzi because they will break it with what's called an ayin tov. And that becomes the way we're supposed to run our meals. Our meals are, I make the hamotzi, I break the bread in my home, but when it comes to benching, we're not going to go into this in much detail, but when it comes to benching, the person who is supposed to lead the benching should be one of the visitors. I break and give as much bread as I can. I mean, I was once in Israel, where I went to a home in Sfat, unbelievably poor people. My God really was really poor. And so they had these two little challahs on the table. I just remember this so clearly. You know, we used to big challahs and big this. They were so poor, but they wanted to host people. So there's two little challahs on the table, and he made hamotzi with kavona like you can't believe, and then he handed out enough that everybody had a kazait, because that's all he had. Now, can you imagine if you're the one who's making that hamotzi? You don't know how much bread he's got. Has he got 25 loaves in the kitchen? He didn't, but we do. We always have enough for everybody, Baruch Hashem. Right? So therefore, the balabait makes the hamotzi, enough for his su'udah, but the guest benches, because in the benching, there's a specific thing where it speaks about the bracha that you give to the host. So what we've looked at is we've seen that the process of hamotzi, which everybody knows, and we know what we do. 2 loaves for sure. Some say 12, some say 4. But whatever you're going to do, the question is, how are you supposed to do it? How much are you supposed to cut? Are you supposed to eat 2 loaves? Break 2 loaves. You're supposed to break 1 loaf. It's all going to depend. If you're going according to a much more Kabbalistic space, the Kabbalistic space of the Arizal, so then you break both loaves. But if you're going according to the Ramah, which is generally what we go and we eat from the bottom one. How do we do from the bottom one? What about Ein Mavirin ala Mitzvot? We understand that according to the way the Bach said, the easiest thing is just bring that bottom one a little bit closer. So it's the one that you see first. You make the hamotzi, that's the one you take, you cut it up, bake a big piece, and then cut that big piece up into smaller pieces to give everybody from that prusa rishona, that first piece of bread, which is really where the bracha vests in its most powerful sense. So let's stop there, and Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue with a little bit more technical other stuff in halacha. Please let me know if there are any specific Shabbos questions that you have, so that we can discuss those specifically. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Rabbi, just a quick question. Does he give a reason what that Kabbalistic notion is?
Doesn't give a reason. It doesn't give a reason. There's no reasons given. And that's part of what this Kabbalistic difficulty is why we don't generally run according to halakha, because the reasons are not clear. You know, halachic reasons are generally very founded in logic and in deep understanding, whereas Kabbalistic reasons aren't always easily accessible. And so therefore, we don't always go according to Kabbalah, we go according to the way halachic process has unpacked itself. Hope that explains gives you an answer. Thanks a lot. Okay, guys. Have a beautiful evening. God bless. God will see you.
Thank you.